pickles. Yormark needs to find a way to either get the Big Two left in the Pac-12 or a pair of top-level ACC teams. Otherwise, the gap widens further. The issue there is, do those two at the top of the Pac-12 have interest, or will they be almost forced into interest? And or, Paul, the ACC teams can't do anything.
No,
They're stuck.
can't.
They're in concrete. It's like they have been caught by the mafia, put concrete discs around their ankles, and thrown into the pond, and maybe they'll get lucky enough to survive at some point.
So I think a lot of this buzz about Florida State and then tangentially Clemson started from Chris Nee of 24/7, of Knowles 24/7, who is an unbelievable recruiting reporter, really covers them very well. It's the FSU site that I actually subscribe to, and because they do a great job. Brendan Sinone's over there, and he did a podcast saying, like, kind of addressing the issue. And if you listen to the podcast, we would be proud of the way he presented it.
Right.
Over here are the issues now. His theory, which is not easily covered in a tweet, is that FSU is going to be the one who, over this time, to figure out whatever grant of rights issues there are to figure out, if there are any to figure out for them to get out of it, is the one who's going to keep sticking their neck out.
Right.
Because they're going to keep chirping their brand over and over and over again to make sure people don't forget it. Over this time, they have to. Their AD has been very...
But they don't have to chirp, not anymore. I could see if this was 3 or 5 years ago because they weren't very good. After Jameis, Paul, they're really good. They're going to be in the news throughout the season.
But they do, they just want to make sure that you don't forget about them. And something to remember about Florida State, they had a retiring president and essentially an interim AD for about 3.5 years. And it really put them behind the 8 ball when it came to kind of all the things you need to do to build a big program. They've got a new president, they've got a new athletic director, and both of those people are out there now. Their job is to... Okay, we got through this interim period where the university was where it was. We need to take them to the next decade. So you're going to hear these things over and over again and repeated about brand and the ACC and the financial gap and how do we make that up. But at the end of the day, unless you've got Johnny Cochran, Clarence Darrow, and whoever else you want to put on the legal super team to figure out this grant of rights, this is not like any of the other situations. Texas and OU had to pay out a year.
Yep.
Everybody else had...
Was it $80 million?
Yeah.
Each?
The AAC teams, their deal was negotiable because of the way it was... So they had to pay out...
It wasn't as big a buyout either.
It wasn't as big a buyout, so they were able to spread it out over a couple years, especially with the new money you're going to be making, they can afford to. USC, UCLA, and Colorado have to pay the Pac-12 $0
because they're leaving when there's no contract.
There's no contract or no grant of rights. So all these other things. When the Big 12 happened before, the TV deal had not been signed yet, so Nebraska and Colorado had to pay like 2 years of exit fee.
And also did not get everything immediately. I think a couple of them,
A&M and Missouri had to pay like a year of exit fee, and there was the fee, and the things were also a little bit different a decade ago because the new, more ironclad grant of rights became a big deal when all that went down. So this does not fit any of that because I don't care. And listen, I would be the happiest man in the world, and I wouldn't even knock on people's doors. I'd be so conceited. I'm just coming into the house if I'm FSU and I win 8 of the next 12 national championships. At the end of it, even if they do that, the grant of rights is still the grant of rights, and they still are locked into it.
Yeah, it's so really, how much has changed since I haven't been on the air in a week? How much has really changed? One thing. Am I right? Colorado's gone. They're leaving. Has anything else in college football realignment changed at all? Which, of course, there had to be someone first to start whatever the next kickstart of what's happening. So other than Colorado leaving the Pac-12, which many people swore would never happen, and even maybe they didn't think they would leave, what has happened next? So if, in fact, Arizona's next, and there have been, and Jason Shear and others, I talked to a couple of different, texted with somebody who covers Arizona about maybe they're next. Don't look for that to happen at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. It takes time. But... because how long, in fact, Garrett, Paul, how long did it take for Colorado to pull the trigger?
I mean...
months.
Yeah.
Actually, months. Basically a year.
Yeah, but I mean, they've known that, nothing's changed on the media deal since at least Christmas, right? I mean, so okay, we're going to negotiate
Well, actually,
the TV
nothing's
deal.
changed since USC and UCLA
No,
walked
but
up or said
at
they were
least
leaving.
like when he announces it in July, I would, if I'm Colorado, I'm not going to assume that, during the season it's really going to get done. And then you hear Christmas. And then the thing that made it worse was in the middle of all that. That's when the Big 12 did theirs.
Cut in line.
So the Big 12 does theirs. And then around Christmas, you start thinking, well, we should probably get ours. And then you hear it's Christmas break. I mean, who's gonna negotiate then? And then pretty much every
People who need a new deal,
pretty much every TV executive is like,
I saw a lot of the what you would call receipts from either people who were popping off at others and how again turf war nasty it got. But one of the ones that I saw was by Andy Staples, who's now with On3.
Yeah.
And he put out four. I think you guys used it. I think he put out 4 different statements, and actually the dates were on the statements, and all of them were pretty much the same thing over a year's time. One of the things I want to. How much did you guys get into UCONN last week?
A little bit. We got a considerable about UCONN, and look, UCONN.
Because I want to try to clear up the air on UCONN if I can.
Yeah, UCONN is. I mean, and it's no secret when we talk about Max Olson about it. That's Brett Yormark's. That's the one that he wants, because he can see the future potential in it for not only basketball, which is his favorite sport, but he thinks long-term growth for the whole conference because of its proximity to New York City and all of that. But I do think that he's smart enough to know that it's not now that you're going to get UConn, or you can maybe put the Pac-12 teams in a bit of a more thing. It's like, look, we'll take UConn over you if you guys are going to drag your feet.
All right, here's what, and you write, I read Max's article. This is Yormark's pet snake. And it's his puppy. Here is the issue with UConn. I think if Brett Yormark could make the decision today, what he has to remind himself of, no matter how much of a rock star or how he's vaulted up the ladder, out of nowhere, because I never heard of him until he was introduced. But then again, I really had never heard of Matt Rule until the name came down. He was the next Baylor coach, other than I'd seen a couple of games with Temple. So here's the deal with Brett Yormark and UConn. Yes, that's kind of like his pet. Right now, which commissioner, even Sankey, who's, Sankey and Petiti have the most clout because of the conferences they run, correct? Mm-hmm. Which commissioner is the fastest rising, who right now is kind of become that not one-hit wonder as a band or singer, but where is he when it comes to college football? Yormark, where is he? How would you describe him?
I would describe him as a popular up-and-comer, but Greg Sankey of course, now everybody's new except for Sankey, really.
Right.
Greg Sankey's, he's the Stones, the Beatles. He's the headliner.
Yeah, he will not ever lead for some. He will never be the band that plays before another band.
No, he would have to be very old without all his original members, and that person would have to be very big.
And his voice is not as good. Yeah,
that would be it. No, he's the Beatles. Like Sankey's that. I would put him right now. And I think Tony Petiti automatically moves into number 2 because he's Big Ten.
Yep.
And he doesn't really have to work that hard to make that conference.
Phillips,
Not that he
Phillips
won't.
has snakes on the skins on the wall.
Yeah, but Phillips has got
he's got
tension.
Yes.
That he's going to have to deal with for 10 years, probably, maybe more, in that league. Yormark is the one who I would put him right now as an easy number 3.
So why would he, why would then Brett Yormark, if in fact UConn is his pet, and that's his baby, and I think there are other larger fish to fry based on what happens within the Pac-12. But why would Yormark, how much equity has he built up, Paul, in the last 1 year?
I mean,
he was, some people had heard of him. I'd never heard of him. That's probably more on me than him. But how much equity has he built up from day one, even before he took over the job for Bowlesby?
Tons.
Immense.
He's got plenty of savings in the bank.
He probably doesn't have to buy a drink at any of the Big 12 cities or towns, right? On campus or not.
Yeah.
So, if in fact UConn is something that intrigues him, and it obviously does, what if it doesn't intrigue? What are the 12 members going forward?
Then it doesn't matter if it really intrigues him or not. It really doesn't, because they're the ones who make the decision. And if you want to know how this works, I'll point you to the Pac-12 and George Kliavkoff.
Right.
I'm sure there's certain things that he could have done over this time, but knowing that it would not have gotten past, you don't have to walk through just one door. You have to walk through. He had to walk through 10 at a time. Now he has to walk through 9. Brett Yormark has to walk through now 13 doors, although maybe Colorado doesn't get to say anything yet because they're not in it, but he's got to walk through 12 doors. And, if enough of them say,
well, okay, so I don't know exactly what the number is, but let's say if there's 12 because of the incoming 4, not including Texas and OU or Colorado. I don't know if it's a 75% pie. Does he have 8 votes? Maybe he does. But what happens if Yormark wants UConn, wants to push that because he feels pretty good about where things are and he's got all this momentum, and then what happens if he pushes it? Let's say, Paul, they vote for UConn and it doesn't pass. How soon after that would that leak out, and how much would that undercut what Yormark has built up with equity?
Yeah, he's got
to me, that's the only danger. That to me is the danger.
He's got to be kind of how the federal government prosecutes cases. Like, they're not going to lose, or if they are going to lose, it's going to be close. Like, it's going to be one of those things that, we decided on this plea agreement because we didn't have everything, so we got him on the lesser charge. You kind of, if you're Brett Yormark, if you're going to lose, it better be close, or it better be, you've got to just do that when you know you're going to win it, which is why he was able to do it with Colorado. I mean, and again, there could have been a year ago, if he had just kicked out when USC and UCLA left, like, hey, what do you guys think about Colorado? There might have been some old guard that were like, nope, not at all. We're glad they're gone. Didn't help us anyway. Dirty hippies, like that could have been the sentiment at Colorado, and you have to work on that. So the UConn idea is very new, so he's got to knead that dough a little bit before he puts it in the oven.
And so when last week I responded, when I don't even remember where I was because I was in so many different places in a short amount of time, but somebody asked me about UConn, so I responded to the one on Twitter who kind of thought we were being a little bit anti-Northeast. No, we're not. That we were anti-UConn. Some are. I know Craig's not real thrilled with them. I'm not so sure about them. It won't keep me up at night. Paul, I think you're kind of in the same boat.
I'm apoplectic about it. Yeah.
Is there something better first? That's nothing against UConn, their men's basketball team, with what they have. But to me, why rush it? There's no need. You're going to have 14 teams. You think they're going to play next year with 13?
No.
Okay, so someone's going to fill that seat, maybe 3 to get to 16, I don't know. So why fill a seat that might have 1 or even 5 people interested in filling that 1 or the second and third seat? So that's, I think, the kind of the back and forth that Yormark has to deal with. But if he takes it to vote, if he gets antsy or he gets a little impatient, he takes it to vote, he better know who the votes are, because if, in fact, it doesn't pass, then he will be, known for he didn't have all his ducks in a row, and I don't think that's his style. I would think he would have to know the vote. It's like when they go, I guess, at Congress or whatever, political figure, they kind of know. That doesn't mean you're going to lose. You won't lose a vote. But you have to kind of know how many Democrats are on the other side of the aisle going to join what you vote to try to pass a bill.
Yeah, which is why we don't see much stuff get to the floor anymore, because they like to know. And if it does and it's going to lose, it's mostly a stunt, so that you can be like, look who did this. See, American people, they hate you. Whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, you have to know. You have to know what's going to happen. And I think, and just seeing everything he's done, he's really good about planting seeds. And so I don't think he's going to rush this. I don't think he's going to say like, hey, but I think UConn will always be out there. And I think you do have to prepare for the reality that, you might say 2 more Pac-12 schools want to join, but Utah and BYU just doesn't want to be in with BYU, and they're going to wait it out and figure out what they're going to do later on. And Oregon and Washington are like, look, guys, I know you're the better option, but we're going to sign a short grant of rights with the Pac-12. We'll add some teams. We'll see where we are in a couple years and just hopefully win some playoff games and get some juice, because it just doesn't work for us. And so you might have gotten Arizona State out of that, but now you've got Arizona State, and I guess who would be leaving out? Arizona State and Arizona State, they want to come together. Then you've got 15 teams.
Yep.
So you've got to okay, well, now we got to go to 16. Well, then the UConn, you just call them up and go, okay, here we go.
There's no rush.
Yeah, there's no rush.
To me, you right now
Yeah,
are the girl of the dance that everybody wants to dance with.
Who is?
I mean, I get SEC Big Ten. Don't get me wrong.
And who is going after UConn? The only conference, honestly, that it would make sense for me outside of the Big 12 would be the ACC, but I don't think that UConn moves the needle enough for them to improve their television deal, so it's just...
You wonder if Brett Yormark's basketball background,
Well, I
with
mean,
his
that's
history,
absolutely.
might also be the one. Hey, listen, UConn and the Big 12 and men's basketball is great. Everything else, with all due respect, can you kind of show us a little bit more evidence?